Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Mike Doherty, and this is Mr. Blackheart. Hey, babes, how's it going? Welcome back. So I have a really fun treat for this one. I'm talking with Dr. Tracy Tuten, who is one of my lifelong friends and mentors. She was my professor at East Carolina University, which is the best school in the world. I mean, not like technically, but I mean, I was a fan. So, yeah, we sat down, we interviewed, we read a book called Four Agreements before we sat down and talked because we're both really into a lot of the same things for like mindfulness and self-actualization. So we have like a fun, long conversation on a lot of that stuff. So it's a little deeper than Britney and Kardashians if you're into that. And we also talk about like advertising and media a little bit and like where does that go from the future and things like that. So yeah, I'm excited for you guys to hear it. I was super excited to have Dr. Tuten on because she is just one of the best people ever. She has such a cool mind and she's so fun to talk with and I just love her. So I'm excited to share the bestie with the restie. So yeah, let's just jump right in. And I love you guys. Later.
You look great.
Thank you. So do you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's the end of the day and the end of the week, so I'm a little tired, but I'll try to keep my energy up for you.
Oh, thanks. Well, thanks for taking the time to hang out with me. It's
Yeah,
been
this is fun, and I love listening to your first episode. And I think you've got a second up there now that I need to listen to.
yeah, that one. I was like, I don't know how people are gonna feel. It's all a lot about Britney Spears, but she's very important to me. So, and it's also just funny and trolly, I think.
It is funny. Yeah, I agree. I thought it was very clever.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's like kind of trolly, but it's just kind of like, a little mix of like funny and serious things.
And you were cracking me up about Lisa Rena's haircut.
Yeah, I don't think that you have Lisa Rinna's haircut. I feel like hers is like yours is soft and cute, and I feel like hers has like really sharp ends, and it has a lot of
It does
highlights
have sharp
to it.
ends.
So like I love. Do you watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? Have you seen?
I can't watch it because I don't have cable.
Okay, I don't have cable either, so I'm usually like a season behind. Because usually
How do
they'll
you watch it?
like Hulu has a lot of them.
Oh,
So
okay. I don't have Hulu either.
okay, yeah, you can watch pretty much like all the way through like almost all the seasons except the latest one. So that's usually how I watch it. But love Lisa Rinna, but she wears wigs, and when she wears wigs, she looks like a completely different person. So it's like a personal campaign I've set up with my friends to like we need to get her to just wear more wigs or grow her hair out.
Well, she has had the hairstyle for a really long time. I used to have this hairstyle back when I first came to East Carolina, but then I grew it all the way down my back, remember?
Did you?
And
Yeah.
then and then I cut it back short again about a year ago. But I have had different hairstyles in between. I went back to it.
Yeah, she also hasn't aged. So I mean, I guess that's like I want that secret. So
Well, I think the secret is plastic surgeon and
vegetables and
fillers
Botox.
and
I mean, I'm starting on that path, so I think maybe I'll get there when, when I'm that age.
yeah, I think she has some help, but there's nothing wrong with that.
No, yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Dolly Parton, for instance,
Oh my God, I mean,
raves about her, and gosh, now her name's slipping my mind. Jane Fonda is another example. I mean, she's like 80 years old and she looks fantastic.
Yeah, and it's just like even Cher, isn't she also like
I think Cher's almost 90.
she and I was like, I think like the place that I go to for Botox will post about Cher. And I was like, what?
Tina Turner's another example. Isn't she 80?
Is she really?
I think so.
I feel like those people, I just feel like they don't age, so it's like they're not actually older.
Well, and I read some of that stuff about conspiracy theorists, like
Huh.
about cabal and the elitists in the world, and
Love that stuff. Yeah.
some of that stuff. Some of them suggest that they're consuming, like the blood of children to keep their youth, and have to wonder.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, like I'm. Yeah, I think I was joking about someone. It's like not a funny joke, probably, but because I'm vegan, so to me, like the factory farming thing is like a weird thing. And I was talking to someone about the concept of which, like, if everyone disagrees with, totally fine. But the concept of like God gave us animals because man has like dominion over the world and like that kind of thing as an argument for eating animals to me is such a foreign thing because it's like that's like to me the same concept as being like God gave man dominion over the world, so babies are ours to take and women are ours to like hurt and things like that. So I'm like, to me, dominion would mean more like to take care of and protect. So I was
Yeah,
joking with someone about like having that same argument and being like, so I'm just going to start factory farming babies for that purpose to like stay young forever. And they're like, Mike, that's not, it's not what that means. That's not a good.
well, there are some of those conspiracy theorists who think that that happens.
Yeah, like that's amazing. Like the Joan Benet Ramsey type. Those are really interesting. I love a good conspiracy theory.
Exactly, exactly.
That's funny. Wait, so are you teaching at ECU?
I'm not. No, I'm teaching a lot of different places as an adjunct and mostly consulting.
Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
it's a really different life for me. It's much different type of schedule and more entrepreneurial, and it's been really different.
That's awesome. How's the whole consulting and stuff? I feel like this year is kind of crazy with
It is. It started off really strong, then it didn't dry up completely, but it slowed down significantly with the pandemic.
yeah.
And but just this last couple of weeks, it started to pick back up again.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if any of your listeners need marketing consulting or marketing research projects, please reach out
Yes. Where can everyone find you? At Brandacity?
at brandacityinc.com. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, you're one of my favorite people ever. I feel like I've told you that several times, and you're like my
Well,
spirit.
it is mutual. You're
Oh,
also one of my favorite people ever.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I
I
was like,
think the best compliment you ever gave me was when you said I was your spirit animal.
I think that's, I was gonna mention that because I feel like that's so true. And then like I recommended the Four Agreements book, and I feel like we've talked kind of throughout since undergrad, really. And I think that you've probably kind of seen the transformation of like what I've kind of gone through certain things.
I
Um,
have seen a lot of transformation in you, definitely. How long have we known each other now? 10 years?
yeah, I was like, I think I had you because I was trying to think like, I think my first class was marketing research with you. And it was like my first or second year. So like 2009, 10. Yeah. So yeah, about 10 years, which is, that's crazy.
That's pretty amazing too.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I still remember I thought you were like so cool and just like I don't think I've ever told you this story, so I thought this would be fun. I was like our marketing research class and I was always really tough, I feel like for school. Like I was always like I think pretty like OCD about like trying to do my stuff. And I feel like you were one of those teachers, like someone asked you a question and you're like, it's in the syllabus, read the syllabus. And I was like, that's amazing. Because it was still like um, first or second year for me. And there was a lot of students I feel like there's two types of students who like go to class and do their work, and the students who just kind of sleep. And I feel like a lot of people catered to the second half there. And
Mhm.
I think that you were like really strong and motivated, and you were like willing to work with people beyond just the classroom stuff. And so that's what I always appreciated about you. And then you sat on the desk. You probably don't even remember this, maybe, but you sat on the desk and you were like really strong and also really pretty. And that's when I was like, I love her.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Over the years, though, we found that we have a lot in common, though. Like we're both
Yeah.
alcohol free.
Yes. How was that? I was going to ask you about that because we haven't talked about it in like a while. Are you still, how long has that been for
I'm
you?
um, it's been going back now to about 2014.
Wow. Okay. That's,
Yeah, so we're both alcohol free and we're both conservatives and we're both Christians.
well, I'm not super Christian. I'm
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I grew up Christian. I'm more into like Buddhism and like mindfulness and that type of thing.
Well, I'm into the enlightenedness as
Yeah.
well, as you can tell from this book, the Four Agreements that I recommended.
Yeah, and that to me,
Like when I recommended it to you, I tried to warn you. You
yeah,
know, it's some of the language, like you have to be open minded,
yeah,
but it will be amazing for you.
yeah, I couldn't. I was like trying to listen to it and then take notes on the good parts, and then I kept being like, and I turned around and I have like I just took so many notes. Like the whole book, I feel like was, and I was like talking. I wish I had read this like 10 years ago because I feel like this was like this huge long journey of me for the whole kind of concept of like taking inventory of all of
Right.
yeah, and then like understanding who you are, and the wearing a mask is a big thing that I feel like most people don't understand.
Yeah, I think most people don't understand that this is like a dream and that we have been programmed with these agreements
Yes.
from the time that we were born.
Hmm.
And most people never recognize that. I mean, that is in essence like living in the matrix, that they're
Right.
living in the dream, adhering to these agreements that society determined would be the agreements that they lived by. And if they never question that, that's how they live forever.
Right. What
It's
kind of
like hell on earth.
yeah, and I love the so the book is the Four Agreements, and there's like four, I can't find my my notes right now, of course, but it talks basically high level about the different agreements that we are kind of indoctrinated into. They call it domestication, which I thought was a really interesting term to basically create people who are more like other people. And it's kind of like we're like your parents and society raises you to domesticate you. And then at a certain point, they say that you are so domesticated that you can domesticate yourself. So then you kind of go out in the world and you are this person that you've just kind of been raised to be. And you domesticate other people by like judging them and kind of telling because you have these presuppositions on who other people should be because of your own domestication. So, what kind of like, when did you read that book and what kind of was your journey towards your mindset with that?
I'm trying to remember when it was that I first read it. It's probably been, well, it's been since I was alcohol free.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
probably around 2015, 2016, I would guess. And
Okay.
I remember so clearly thinking, why couldn't I have read this in high school? Just think of like how different high school drama and the painfulness of high school culture, how different that would have been if
Right.
I already knew the four agreements and had already adopted those four agreements to live my life by. I mean, so many things would be different. But especially not necessarily who I am, because I am who I am, and
Right.
that doesn't necessarily change. But how I interface with the world would have been so different, and all of those things that were drama or concerns or stresses, most of them wouldn't have existed if I had known the agreements.
Right. That's a good. What inspired you to go sober? If you are you comfortable with talking about that?
Um, for me, uh, drinking really was something that um, it wasn't my best self. I think that's probably the best way to say it. I
Yeah.
was not my best self when I was drinking,
Okay.
and it's definitely something that even on my worst day sober, I'm better than my best day with alcohol.
I love that. Yeah. So I think I was like in grad school when I went sober because I was like working and then I was in grad school. So it was just kind of like work all day, grad school all night. And then I started running as kind of like my one place to not be by my phone and accessible by email. So it was like a good form of escape. So weekends were kind of like my time to do homework and to like do long runs and stuff. And I had the worst hangovers. Like I would get like wake up at like 6 a.m. and be hungover till like 6 p.m. And I was like, I don't have time to do this. And then for me, it kind of snowballed where it was like, I feel like I also had friends who were just drinking friends, where you like just go to the bar and you're like, sober, we don't talk. You know, like we don't have anything in common. So like I don't have time to nurture those friendships. And then I don't have time to be hungover. And it's also the concept of like using it as a form of escapism. So like I didn't drink at home. Like I wanted to be like a cool, mature adult and have like wine at home and stuff. But I just didn't like the taste. It was like a social thing for me. So, but I would just kind of like go to the bar with like my coworkers at like 5 p.m. on Friday and close the bar down. And I was like, I don't want that form of escapism to, you know, like the week is hard, so I'm gonna drink, or like I'm having a long day, so I'm gonna drink, or so like I like the concept of just sitting in your problems and dealing with them and figuring it out and kind of moving forward. So
Absolutely. And now that you've adopted the agreements, it relates back to the book too, because it talks about how we all are light in the universe.
yeah.
And if our body is light and it's this pure form of energy, we don't want any poison in
Oh,
our body.
yes. And I always talk about because I've had even people when I quit were like, that's not good for you to not drink. And I was like, I don't think any doctor anywhere would be like, you should drink more alcohol.
There's
Like,
plenty of evidence that people actually shouldn't, that it is a
yeah,
poison, it's
like it's
linked to
actually poison.
numerous forms of cancer and so on.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they said in that too that like I that really stood out to me was that concept of like people go to work and then they like watch TV basically and then they it's like that I think they were talking about like working for the reward and it's like
Oh,
they
right.
yeah they like avoid working because they just want the reward and then once they get the reward, they're not happy. So they work all week, like trying to avoid working. And then on the weekends, they just drink themselves, you know, silly.
Exactly. And that's the fourth agreement. And that's actually the one that I have the hardest time with because the idea is that you should say no to anything that isn't a joy for you to do. But we do have responsibilities. So I have a really hard time kind of deconstructing what are the responsibilities that I have to do versus what could I say no to if they aren't something that would be joyful for me so that I can always do my best. Um, and kind of where I've landed on it is for me to reframe my thinking or reframe the logic of it. And that if I decide that it is something that's a responsibility that I have to do, to think I get to do that, you know, that I've chosen to do that. Therefore, I'm going to be joyful about it.
Yes, I love that. That's been so like, that's always my mentality with working out, which is like, I think kind of broke me this year, which is why I have like all the, you know, went blonde and have tattoos now and all that stuff. But for me, working out is kind of like, I try to use that same mentality. So that's so funny that, of course, you would say the same exact thing. But it's like, it's not that like I have to run 30 something miles or whatever. It's like I get to, and I should be thankful for like the ability to do that and like the journey that I've had to get here and, you know, all that stuff. So I I love that you have that same.
Exactly, exactly. And then it fits with do your best.
Hmm.
And that one's to me it's even more than just do your best because it does talk about how you should be saying no to things that aren't joyful parts of your life or joyful actions on your part.
Yes, I think that one I think was really interesting and helpful because I've been like doing the marketing stuff with engineering and all of that. And I think lately I've been running, I feel like you're the same way where you're like always running 100 miles an hour and there's just like always things going, which is what I've always like, looked up to you for was just like you've always had like a lot of things cooking kind of. um, but for me, I think that was really interesting the way he phrased that, where it's like always do your best, but know that your best is going to be different, like in the morning and
Absolutely.
at night. And so it's like not like this always, you have to like always be pushing because then you burn yourself out and then your best won't even be good, kind of
And
thing.
it's our best, not best as defined by someone else.
Right.
Because if best is defined by someone else, that's the judgment that we're trying to escape.
Yeah. And I think that's such an interesting perspective. Heard that the other day and I was like, oh, and I actually started trying to be like, okay, well, I'm actually currently in the burnout period. I tend to go through like several months where I'm at this like huge high and I'm just working all the time. And then I'll do like a week or two where I'm just like dragging and like going into work late. And this has been those like week or two period. And I got home and I was like, I need to work all night kind of thing. And it was just like, do your best. And I don't have it in me. I'm burning out. So
Well, it's your best. It's your definition of what is your best given
right.
your circumstance at that point in time, and you get to define what it is,
Yeah.
not someone else. You shouldn't be thinking, what would my mom say is the best, or what would Tracy say is the best, because then we've given away that power again, and we're trying to reclaim that as part of having these four agreements.
Yes. I think that's amazing.
I think that's the toughest one for me though. And I do also struggle with the third agreement on don't make assumptions,
Yeah.
because even though I'll recognize that I'm making assumptions, I hesitate to have the courage to clarify with communication.
Yeah. I think that is definitely tricky. And I think it's like is that the one that has to do with people saying things and not taking that personal, or is that a separate rule or a separate
That's
thing?
the separate. The second one is don't take anything personally.
Okay, because I struggle with that one, and then I think my biggest one is I don't remember the phrasing, but it's like don't um, basically like hold people to that same standard, like judging people. I think that is a hard one for me because I've always been so internal with all of my uh, what do you call it, domestication type stuff. So I think that
Right.
I've always been really intense outwardly too, which is probably where Mr.
You
Black
are
Heart comes
intense.
from.
That's one of the things I love about you. You
And
are intense,
see,
but
people
I
tell
love
me
it.
that, and I don't get it, and I don't understand what that means. Like people who have dated me have said, like, you're too intense for me. I can't date you,
Oh,
basically.
I think you are perfectly intense. It's
Thank
exactly right.
you. Thank you. See, I
It's a
don't.
compliment.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. I'm getting to that point now where it's kind of like that freedom type thing where it's like I love who I am and it's taken a long time to get to that point. So it's the concept of like if people don't, think you're too intense or don't like all these certain things, then like that's kind of their own problem and they're not part of my tribe. So
Exactly. And in the four agreements, there's a line. I wish I could remember exactly how it was stated, but it essentially says, if you're not in alignment with another person, walk away. And it's just that
yeah.
blatant, walk away.
Yeah, where it was like it's okay to let someone who doesn't love you walk away or something like that was
Mhm. And love you unconditionally so that they're
right.
not judging and they're not using the black magic of the word on you.
I loved all of the phrasing for like black magic and domestication and like we are in hell on earth through the like internal turmoil that we give ourselves through the domestications, which would be indoctrination of like what we've learned, and then creating heaven on earth, which is like giving yourself peace by basically loving yourself and allowing yourself to be happy and be nice.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just like,
Being love, allowing yourself to be happy. And so much of it, I mean, I guess the first agreement is really the foundation for all of them, but the second agreement I think is done more in terms of happiness for me.
uh-huh.
The don't take anything personally, to actually, I mean, sometimes it just goes through my mind. It'll just hit me like, this isn't about me. This is totally about them. And it's almost like it's shocking when the thought runs through my mind, but it's true. You
Yeah.
know, everything that happens, whatever sorts of interactions we have with other people, whatever they do or say or want or judge, it's all about them. It's not about me.
That is,
Only my stuff is about me.
that is such a hard, that is super hard for me because I'm one of those people that's like, you cut me off, or like my mom doesn't answer my call, which like, mom, if you're listening, you need to answer my calls more. But, but it's like, my mom doesn't answer my call and it's like, oh my God, she hates me. You know what I mean? And it's like, she's probably
It's
this.
not about you.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I'm like, it's not about me. It's not, because then I also have this saying, where like, because I try to talk to people about, and like when I say things, I'm like, I'm not ever coming from a bad place. So if I say things like, and it sounds rude, it's just like how it is. It's just kind of like, here's facts kind of thing, which Mr.
I
Black.
used to know someone who would say that. He would say, if there are two ways for you to take something that I say, one way is good and one way is bad, I meant the good way.
Yeah, and I'm always like, I'm never coming from a bad place, but I always say that it's kind of like how people have RBF, if you've ever heard that, like resting bitch face. I always say that I have like resting bitch voice, where it's like, I don't mean it bad, but I think my voice just sounds like, meh, like kind of catty. So yeah, I always like will say things, I'm like, I didn't mean it bad, but it's like, if you take it personal, that's a personal problem, is what
But
I.
I really liked how you said it. Like, I'm coming at this from a place of love. I feel like
Yeah.
anyone who's read the four agreements and adopted them, and I'm just assuming if someone reads the book that they would want to adopt the agreements. I can't imagine someone reading it and choosing to stay indoctrinated, or
Oh my gosh,
to
yeah.
stay living in the matrix. But maybe that happens. But if we could just say, I'm coming at this from a place of love, and then be able to say whatever's on our mind, being impeccable with the word, then they wouldn't take it personally, because they would be following the agreements that we're following.
And then not take it personal, yeah. Do you feel like, because I won't lead the question or whatever, do you feel like you've seen people who you are like, clearly they don't understand? We're like, you're on different planes. And how do you interact with
Oh,
people
absolutely.
when you know that like they don't understand anything you're saying? Because I feel like that's been a big thing for me
The,
lately.
the the frustrating thing for me is when there are people who um, are really so living in the hell on earth. They're so living in the matrix, so to speak, and some of those people, you can tell that even if I introduce them to the concepts, they wouldn't be able to grasp enough to pull themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, they're
Yes.
that domesticated that
Right.
there'd be no hope. Um, and I think I do identify people like that. I think when I'm meeting people, I'm judging, which of course the book suggests that we shouldn't be judging, but it's natural for us to do that. But I'm judging and sort of sizing people up and looking to see if they're seeking to be enlightened or not. And really, I want to spend more time with people who are on the path to enlightenment, not the people who are comfortable being the sheep.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because that's been, I mean, I think everything has been really polarizing with like politics and then masks and COVID and all of that stuff. And like, I kind of wanted to make this podcast partially just to be like, I feel like one of my quote unquote gifts is to just be like silly and I don't think I'm super empathetic. It's like factual. So I think in those situations, my role is to be like, hey, look over here. You know what I mean? Like, take your mind
You
off.
are the black heart.
Yeah, exactly. So I cannot cry with someone. I don't know what to do. So it's kind of like, hey, look over here. Let's talk about Kardashians or whatever. Um, but I feel like I had this, so like that whole concept for me was like a few months ago, what this whole thing started getting really crazy was just talking to people and being like, I wanted to be in politics for a long time until recently. And I was just like,
I didn't know that.
I don't think that there's a place at the table for someone who's not so like one end or the other. And I feel like there were so many people I was trying to talk to that just like have no concept of what I'm trying to say. And so I was just like, I feel like I was talking in a different language to everyone.
Well, in some ways you were.
Yeah. And so that was like a really weird, I guess, lesson or, and just kind of trying to take a step back. And I like stopped doing social media for a little bit because I was like, I don't, I don't
Do
think,
you know, are you familiar with Marianne Williamson?
I feel like I've heard the name. Yeah.
I'm going to have to turn you on to her and also A Course in Miracles as well.
Okay.
That can be the next book.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. I'm down because this one was amazing. So, and I've also discovered Audible is my like sweet spot because I'm always like working and working out. So I can just read while I list like work.
And this book, The Four Agreements, I think it's one that the repetition really helps to just, because every page of the book it's almost like I wanted to highlight the entire book, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I just
Every
don't
single sentence had something good.
really.
So, listening again and again or listening and reading can help solidify it for us because it is challenging. It's, the four agreements sound simple, but they're not easy.
No, I feel like there's so many. It's like you have that natural inclination, which I guess is the whole domestication. It's like been your whole life working towards this to like kind of go back into those types of behaviors and thought patterns and things like that. So I just
And
found
have
my
you
note.
started to do an inventory?
What was that?
Have you started to do an inventory of the agreements that you want to dispel?
Um, a bit. Yeah, I feel like it's honestly, I feel like this is something that I've been kind of working towards since I was in Virginia. I think that kind of like leading up to sobriety and all of that has been this big journey for me. But I think the judging others is a big thing for me. Like I try to do it not in like a terrible way, but I always said to people, which was like to me a big glaring thing reading through the four agreements was like I would always say to people, they're like, Mike, you're like so rude. And they'd be like, well, I'd be like, you think I'm tough on you? You should hear how I am to myself. And there
Great.
were so many. I just found my notes finally because my like it's not updating on this computer. But so yeah, it was the concept of like where he was like, no one has ever abused you worse than you've abused yourself. And I was like, which I mean, I think that there's, situations in which people have been, abused worse than you could. But I think for myself, like, has like, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, and then there was another one that this quote that was like, we have to be what we are so we don't have to present a false image. That was like, I think that was like, I was not out in college and I didn't come out until I moved to Virginia, until it was like safer and all of that stuff for me. And I think the concept when I was in school, I was like, well, maybe, and I had this like internal dialogue. I was like, well, maybe I'll just try to like be straight and marry a woman and then kind of go down this like traditional path that I'm supposed to be. And then I had the thought of like, if you do that, it's like you never actually lived your own life and like no one knows who you are and everyone who likes you is only your friend or only likes you for who they think that you are. So it's like a disservice to yourself because you just threw your life away, and it's a disservice to your friends because they don't even know who you are. So
Right. It's like you would be lying to them about who you are. And
right.
we all wear a mask, of course, and the book talks about that, the mask that the self that we project to others. But that would have been, such a complete, uh, coverage of you.
Yeah. So I think that and there was also one thing that I don't think we've never talked about, but it was, where was it? Hold on. I think uh, is it the impeccable words? I think so. Yeah, I think so. Um, yeah, because I wrote a bunch of quotes down. It's like, if you say you're stupid and someone says you're not, you create a new agreement. And we've never talked about this, but this was also a really big turning point for me, which I think, like, I mean, 10 years ago when we were in school, I feel like communication and things that you would say like out loud were really different than they are now with like PC culture and censoring and all that stuff.
It's already changed a lot. It has.
Yeah, which is wild. But I remember saying, I was in your class and I said something and I was like, ugh, I'm such an idiot. And you just stopped me, like, serious. And you're like, no, you're not. Don't ever call yourself that again. And I was like, oh, I was like, thank
So glad I did that.
yeah. And I think, so like, that's always really stood out to me. Which is funny that like we've never mentioned that, but then they said that it was like, if some, like, he gives the example of like this girl starts singing and then her mom says, you're a bad singer, stop it. And then she creates this new agreement that like she's a bad singer and she'll never sing again. And I think, kids say like, I'm such an idiot. And then for then you to say like, no, you're not, don't speak like that about yourself. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
don't give yourself negative affirmations.
right. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And, it's like the first time it really resonated with me and anyone ever like sternly was like, stop. I was like, whoa, okay. And I think that was like the beginning of creating a new agreement. Um, so I just think it's really like full circle having this
That's
conversation.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I love you have that memory. And it is kind of full circle because that might have actually been even before I read the book.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. It's like you were already on this path creating this like,
And I didn't want you to be misusing your words.
yes. You're
She's
starting
impeccable with the word. Absolutely.
yeah, I definitely need to get better with impeccable words.
Well, and I think it's so important. It's not only what we say to other people, although that matters as well. It is what we say to ourselves,
Right.
and even what we catch ourselves saying internally. Like we might not say it out loud, but we might think it. Like I went through a divorce, as you know, recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day I was talking to a friend and I said, I'll always be alone. And she immediately, just like you were telling the story, like how I stopped you from saying you're an idiot, she immediately said, don't you put that out into the universe.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because if you speak it, you know, the words have power.
Right.
So she immediately wanted me to stop and not say that out loud again,
Yeah.
unless that is indeed what I want.
Right.
For me to think, is that what I want? Because the words can create the future.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of like that law of attraction type thing where
It
it's
is.
like, even if you're not cognizant of like, this is what I'm doing. It's like those like suppressed thoughts that you have that like starting a business. Like this year, I kind of started on that path. And then there's like that whole perception of like, you start a business, but then in the back of your mind, it's like, well, I'm going to fail. So it's like people like you partially do something and it's like these like hidden thoughts that you have deep within your subconscious, like are actually driving.
Like you're not all in because you're giving yourself the freedom to fail, but you're sort of setting yourself up to fail that way.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you're saying, like,
You're building in your excuses.
yeah, like, no, I'll find someone. But then deep down, you're like, no, I won't. Like in the back of your mind and kind of like creating that negative energy, because I do believe a lot in energy and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love how the book talks too about how awareness is so important
Mm-hmm.
because, of course, it's really difficult to be true to these four agreements
Yeah.
100% of the time. It's really hard. I mean, we've been domesticated, of course. We're fighting against the
Mm-hmm.
agreements that we were socialized into.
Right.
Um, but but to be able to recognize and say, I have awareness that say I wasn't impeccable with my word, or that I took something personally, or that I didn't do my best. And then once I have awareness, I can, in essence, reprogram myself
Right.
to say, almost like a post-action report. What I should have done is blank, and then you're really programming your mind to do better with the agreements in the future.
Yeah, and to be like truly honest with who you are, and not to just overlook it and be like, oh, well, I was tired, or like create excuses for yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe whenever we hear ourselves making an excuse for ourselves, we should say, instead of making the excuse, just acknowledge that was the best that I had at that time.
Right. Yes. I quit. So this is like, I think one of the things, so this, I use Buddha and the gift of anger a lot as one of my, I read this like a few years ago in Virginia, which is just the concept of like someone tried to give Buddha a gift, and he said like, I'm not going to accept, well, he was yelling at the Buddha in like this like town square and all this stuff. And he was like, if someone gives you a gift and you don't receive it, who's left with the gift? And the guy was like, well, I guess it would fall back on the person that's giving him the gift. And he was like, exactly. So just like a gift, it's like the same concept, paraphrasing here, of like anger. So if someone's trying to give you anger, or you can use any other emotion, that you're just like, I'm not going to accept this. So I think it's like that same type of mentality really is woven through this book for me, because that's
Absolutely.
a guiding principle for me.
And especially with guilt. If other people wanted to make us feel guilty about something, or try to get us to feel shamed about something, we can, just ask ourselves, what is the agreement for us? What is the truth for us? And as long as we're clear with ourselves, and in love and light, then we just refuse to accept the guilt.
100%. Yes. And it's also, I like quit smoking like just over 2 years ago, I think, at this point. So, but one of the things that I learned in that situation was the concept of like when you're having a craving, instead of being like, oh, I'm, really want a cigarette right now. And then you're like deep into your feelings of like anger and like anxiety and all the stuff that gives you, just kind of like sit there non judgmentally and like observe the feelings that you're having and like the physical reactions, and then like watch it pass. And so
Oh, that's so cool.
that's like a
That's
really, that kind of falls in line with, I think, this, a lot of the ideologies of this too, where it's like if something happens, to just kind of like non-judgmentally view it and say like, okay, this is what it was, and that's what it was.
exactly. I love that. You reminded me of this. Of course, Jim Carrey has his pros and his cons. Uh, Sometimes I hear Jim Carrey speak and I think he's a genius, a prophet. Other times I hear him speak and I think, ooh,
Really?
what's happening with Jim Carrey? But I heard him, I think it was in an interview or something once, talk about how he had learned to separate himself from what was happening and just watch whatever it was pass, like clouds passing in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that imagery, because then I could picture that, instead of getting caught up and emotional about
Right.
some event, to just imagine myself distanced and picture it just like the clouds are blowing past.
Yes. And like those like safe, detached, non-judgmental type.
Yeah. And he said it beautifully. I wish I could probably find the exact quote for you. I'll try to look for it, because it
Okay.
was one of those really, those moments where you have to say, that was insightful. That was
Right.
really, that
Yeah,
was,
I
that was
heard a lot of his quotes. So
you have or you haven't.
I have not, no. Yeah, but I like
Yeah,
Yes
I
Man.
think I think he was on the path to enlightenment. I don't know if he stayed on the path or not, but he was for a while.
Okay, interesting. Honestly, like Yes Man, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie,
I
but
haven't.
okay, I think there's like a good, it's one of those, it's like funny, but I feel like it's also kind of like when, who was it that did Click? It's kind of like also got like a seriousness to it. And so, but it's a really good movie. And the concept is like, say yes instead of just living your life like, no, I'm afraid, blah, blah. It's like taking it to that far extreme where it's kind of like a Toby Robbins or whatever type person. And it's like, say yes. And so all they do forever is say yes. Um, so it's like an extreme thing, but I think it kind of like is in line with the whole freedom aspect of this book, I think, which is to just like, for me it seemed like to just like allow yourself to be free and to not feel guilty about living your best life kind of thing.
Because you're not taking it personally.
Right.
So if someone else would make you feel a certain way, that's about, you just immediately say, that's about them. That's not about me. Now you don't have to feel any of that emotion they were trying to transpose onto you.
Yeah, I think that's a hard. Yeah, because even if it's like, um, people have the feelings of like, I am sad, so here's terrible things. Let's both be sad together, and it's just that I think has been a really common thread in communications, and I'm just like, I'm not Mr. Blackheart, so I can't be sad with you. I don't know what to say. Like, sorry,
That
but
does not fit the Mr. Blackheart persona.
this is like really off brand for me. So I'm like not gonna be sad with you, but I appreciate your sorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
That's funny. So what does the as far as the like freedom piece, what stands out for you the most in that? And like what are things that you got the most out of that piece of the book, kind of like the endings?
For me, I am really trying to reprogram my mind right now in terms of how I define success, what success is. And I feel like that was so domesticated into us that, like we will strive for a certain type of job, we'll strive for certain titles, we'll try to keep getting promotions, we'll aim for the corner office and, you know, a certain amount of money. And like it's like a hamster wheel that you have to get on. And there's an awful lot of freedom in not being on that hamster wheel. But then that also means that, does that mean we're saying I'm willing to not be successful in order to have that freedom? Or is it that I need to redefine what success is to me? And really, it's that I need to redefine what success is to me rather than accepting the agreement of society as to how society has defined success. So I'm that's something I'm journaling on right now. I'm trying
Okay.
to work out my own agreement about what success means.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like I'm like this year. So honestly, I keep saying Iron Man broke me, and I think that it was in a good way. But I think I had this realization like after I did it, because it's like the furthest I've ever gone like without a motor, and I didn't die. And so I think it's one of those things where it's like you stretch yourself and then see what happens kind of thing, and you learn a lot about like your mental state, and I feel like a lot of these types of things like thematically are things that fell out for me during that, which is kind of like the tattoos and all that stuff, kind of like we talked about, like you're not part of my tribe if you're against it. And I also felt like there's a lot of the stuff where I was like, everything that I believed in is like stupid and not real. And so
It's a dream. Exactly.
yeah,
It's a dream.
yeah. And so I think for me it's just like that, kind of like taking that inventory of yourself and kind of trying to uh, un why do I keep forgetting the word? Indoctrinate yourself, basically,
Yeah.
domesticate yourself. That's the word, and allow yourself to like live freely and be unapologetically yourself. And that's been kind of like one of my this like long journey. But now there's like words to it with this book. I feel
And
like.
look how far you've come already. I mean, I think that's amazing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I feel like I'm not the same person as an undergrad, but like, I think that's good because that was 10 years ago, right? So hopefully
But
we're
you've
growing.
grown so much. I mean, really, of when I think about all the people that I've known for a decade, the amount of growth that you've packed into that decade is truly astounding.
Oh,
And you should be proud of yourself for that.
thank you. You're the best.
I really believe that. Yeah. I mean, I've seen you. I've seen you grow and evolve and develop on the journey, and I love who you've become and who you will become, because you're still growing and changing.
Yes. And I think that all of this, like I've wanted to have, and really working with you with the textbook stuff, doing like the freelance stuff, I think was has been such a fun thing for me as like an outlet creatively. And I think we talked before I started my agency of like, I think, this is something I want to do and all that. And then this year after Ironman, I was like, why not? Like, what am I waiting for? And it's like that whole like the voice in the back of your head that's like, oh, you can't do it or whatever. And I've kind of come to the realization, I think I said in the first podcast where I was like, if no one listens to this, that's fine. I'm still in the same place I was. So like whatever. But it's worth at least like start the LLC, like kind of go find business and like go make it happen and just keep kind of like plugging along because like what do you have to lose really other than some sleep?
And
So,
you're having, as long as you're having fun. So
yeah,
you are
exactly.
you are doing the fourth agreement. You're doing your best
Yeah.
and doing something with joy because it's something you chose to do.
Yeah, and that's like also starting this podcast. Like, I think it was, also to just connect with people and to talk and have fun. And like, we haven't talked since like we've been talking via like Skype and like
And
Instagram.
text and
Yeah.
Instagram.
And I was like, I haven't seen you since like you came to Tucson like 3 years ago. And so I was like, this is my first interview with like my favorite person. This is going to be so fun. So it's like already paying off.
It is. And this is going to be a long episode depending on how you end up trimming it. But
Yeah, I don't edit much because I don't like, I feel like it loses authenticity.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and like it's a lot deeper than Britney Spears. So, I mean, give him a variety.
I wonder if Brittany has read the Four Agreements. I really wonder.
How do you feel about Britney?
Oh, I love her. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with her, but I definitely respect her.
Are you saying I'm obsessed with her? No, that's amazing.
Don't take it personally.
No, I'm not. I'm not because it's true. But I'm gonna get a tattoo. I've already like priced it out. My like little lip tattoo, so it'd be like a mother-son tattoo. But really, probably brother and sister age range. But I'm glad that you love her because I think she's amazing. Obviously,
She is amazing. Yep, she is amazing.
yeah, she's like going through a hard time. She's a little crazy. So, but I
Is
love
she
her.
crazy?
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like anyone would be a little crazy after that kind of life.
Absolutely. But maybe she's just being who she truly is. Maybe she's following the Four Agreements.
I mean, people tell me I'm crazy all the time, and they're right. So,
The best people are.
yeah, the best people are. That's what I say all the time. Yeah, that's amazing. So, I do also want to talk about if you have time, like social media and media. I think it'd be really interesting to get your perspective with all of this because I feel like you were like 10 years ago writing the textbooks for like social media, and it was still really
I
new.
was on the cutting edge then.
Yeah, it was like you had this class which I mean, my mom doesn't really know what podcast does, so like their perceptions on like social media are hard, but they're like, is this really a job, and so I feel like you were one of the first people to like talk about social media and like that advertising perspective. And so I think my first question is like, what kind of like stood out to you and you're like, this is going to be like a big area for like media and advertising?
Yeah. So what I loved about social media back in the day was how organic it was. That
Mhm.
most social media was truly organic. And so it was word of mouth communication, it was publicity, it was earned media. And whether a brand could market through social media, but they had to be participating, they had to be organically, authentically involved in social media to succeed. uh, and because that's what we were doing, that's what the consumers were doing with
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to essentially live according to our rules. Like we
Right.
it was up to us to domesticate the brands
Mm-hmm.
as to what the social media community was going to be about. But now I feel like it has become so commercialized that it's really disappointing to me. I miss seeing the true, organic, authentic, gritty, real participation that we used to have.
What do you mean that it's become like as users we've become commercialized, or as like marketing it's become commercialized, or?
But both, like, so much, there's so much paid advertising in social media now,
Yeah.
and even what's not directly paid sponsored posts. We have so much in terms of influencer marketing now.
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know if it's just who I'm following that makes me feel this way, but when I'm looking at social media posts now, I feel like 80 to 90% of what I'm seeing is marketing as opposed to organic communication.
That's probably yeah.
You think I'm right?
No, yeah, I definitely follow a few advertisers, and it's just all like, thanks for these products, and you're just like, this isn't a communication, like a conversation. It's just
Exactly. It's not a conversation anymore.
like,
Precisely.
as you would like, because I feel like in your textbooks, I don't know, if you coined this or what, but it's something that I've preached since our classes with the whole push pull communication. And I feel like it's all push now, where it's just like, look at this, check it out. Hey, look at this, check it out. Look at this, thanks for this. And you're just like, okay, cool.
Exactly.
Like, it's room
It's too
for
much.
yeah.
It's too much. So we've lost that flavor of what social media used to be.
Mm,
And I keep wondering, will something come up to replace it, so that we can still have that kind of authentic conversation again
right.
on a digital platform?
That would be interesting. Yeah, I do wonder if there's going to be like another Facebook type. I mean, Facebook's huge, but I feel like people may get tired at some point of a platform and migrate to where there's more freedom.
Absolutely. Well, and I've joined Parlor, but I haven't spent a lot of time on it. But that's supposed to be one that's more free, more for
Okay.
free speech.
Okay. Because yeah,
So maybe we should both check out Parlor together.
yeah, I'm definitely down, because I was like, I would consider myself like moderate right leaning, because I feel like it's definitely I always get this backwards because I'm better at writing, but fiscally conservative, more socially liberal in a way.
Liberal. That's what I am too. Yeah, I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
so I've read a lot of things were just getting deleted and marked as like fake news, even though they're not really fake news. And then I have a friend, like a lot of my friends are like all the way to the left. And they're like, well, things on the left get deleted, which I was like, okay, well, we'll see.
Not often.
Yeah, like, okay, hashtag fake news. But but I was like, if we're deleting things on both sides, like what happened to freedom of speech and of like journalism and things like that? It's like people can't publish
we could
articles.
have we could have a whole other conversation about what happened to journalism.
Oh,
Let's save that as a
oh,
topic.
yeah. I mean, I used to work in news advertising, and I think that made me not want to work in news advertising. So yeah, I'm on that board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and even you're kind of just related back to the book conversation we were having. You know, as a discipline, as an industry, journalists aren't being impeccable with their word.
No, and I don't think a lot of marketers are either. And that's why I had to leave the
That's a
industry.
great point. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, have you experienced so like for me, I don't think advertising has to be this cliche manipulative type thing that I think it's sold as a lot of times by like mainstream type media, where it's like people are just manipulating you to, like, from my perspective, I've
You know,
always
that
said,
exists, but there can also be ethical advertising.
right. Yeah. 'Cause, like, from my perspective, I've always said it's kind of like sociology, psychology, art, and business, like all rolled together to ideally be like, I'm looking for this thing. And they can be like, here's this thing. It's not like you're ugly, use this cream, or, like whatever. So, like, have you had experiences with this? And what are your thoughts on like that aspect of it?
Well, it definitely exists. I mean, as you said, a lot of marketers are not impeccable with their word. There is a lot of manipulation, but I think especially when it comes to content marketing, that we see more of that pull marketing and more content that is really designed to be useful and relevant and authentic for the target audience. So
Hmm.
I feel like content marketing ends up, at least that's my perception. Maybe there's manipulative content marketing, but I see that more as that ethical form of advertising.
Interesting. Okay. Because that's why I,
Yeah, we'll have to revisit that.
yeah, well, I think my last big question then is, where do you see media going? Because I feel like you were so in social media. What are your initial predictions for like next future of advertising?
I want to think more about that. What I see right now is so much automation, so automated, so programmed,
Hmm.
all controlled by algorithm, and I think we lose a lot of the magic
Yeah.
with that level of automation.
Hmm.
And so it's like a lot of the art component of what made media great is going to be missing because it's just a recipe instead of a creation.
Hmm.
And I can't quite envision how can we come past that? How can we get back to or move forward to something where we have that creative intelligence there as opposed to algorithms and AI and programmatic advertising and marketing automation and all of these things that have just essentially turned what should be artistic into code,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Right. No, I love that. Yeah, because the imagery of like fashion art is what initially attracted me to advertising, and then as I kind of started going through, I was like, oh, print is kind of like not a thing so much, and so that evolved into like social. But it is for sure what you're saying as far as like it's all code and programmatic, and tweets are scheduled, and things are like, here's what it is, and it's not this like let's engage and talk about things. So.
Exactly. And even the chatbots can use AI to create conversations. So, what is creative intelligence now?
Right. That's a wild, wild thought.
It is.
Uh, yeah. Well, I think it'll be interesting to see, and I will for sure. What is the name of the new Facebook that's more freedom that you're on?
Parlor. It's
Parlor.
Parlor.
Okay, I'll have to download that as well then.
Yeah,
And
let's both get on it. We'll interact with each other some there. We'll learn about its nuances.
perfect. Okay, that works. And then if anyone wants to go to your website, find you on Twitter, what is the address again? One more time.
It's at Brandacity.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It's so good to get to see you and to talk to you. It's been too long.
It was fantastic. We should plan this more often.
We should. We need to have more Zoom parties now that I know how to use Zoom. Thanks, quarantine.
Absolutely. We can have Zoom parties to get together, and then it doesn't matter how many hours we live away from each other.
Perfect. Yes, that's great.
And you can tell me more about Brittany.
Oh, yeah, I have so many. We can definitely definitely go off on that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I will talk to you later. Have a good night.
Have a great night. It's been my pleasure.
All right, same. Bye.
Bye.
So there you have it, friends. Thanks so much for hanging out, for coming to listen to this episode, whether it's your first or, you've already heard a few. Thank you. Make sure you follow or subscribe or whatever the buttons are, and give me stars if that's an option, or whatever, insert more pandering conversation words here about getting ratings and shit. So, yeah, once again, thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, maybe learned a little bit. And if you haven't already read the Four Agreements, I would 100% recommend it because it's so good. And I have so many notes written down, and I'm probably going to reread it or at least re-audible listen to it because I can't read several more times. So I've been recommending it to all of my friends, to the infamous my mom. So listen to it and let me know what you think. Also, let me know what you think about this podcast and all those other things. With that, I'm going to let you go. We're going to stick a fork in it once again and say adieu. So I'm going to leave with one more, try to keep this up a little bit because I didn't do it the last one, with a basic white girl saying. And for this one, I'm going to say, dare to dream out loud. So, dare to dream out loud, kids. I love you. And later.